Hej allihopa, this is Welsh ASMR 82. Hey, how you doing? So I was looking at different things, different topics that I could choose for videos on this channel. And one of the ones that came up as being something that would be interesting and that I would enjoy looking at is learning a little bit more about the Skånian dialect of South Sweden and Skåne. So I'm going to read a little bit about the history, and then towards the end of the video we're going to look at some individual vocabulary words and see how they're dissimilar to standard Swedish. I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so Scanian in Swedish Skånska, in Danish Skånsk, is an East Scandinavian dialect spoken in the province of, now I would say in English, Scania, like the car brand, right? Scania. In southern Sweden, Old Scanian formed part of the Old Scandinavian dialect continuum, which is a series of language varieties spoken across some geographical areas, such that neighbouring varieties are mutually intelligible, and are by most historical linguists considered to be an East Danish dialect group, but due to modern era influence from Standard Swedish in the region, and because traditional dialectology in the Scandinavian countries normally has not considered glossies that cut out state borders, the Scanian dialects have normally been treated as a South Swedish dialect group in Swedish dialect research. However, many of the early Scandinavian linguists classified it as South Scandinavian, and some linguists such as Elias Vessian also considered Old Scanian a separate language, classified apart from both Old Danish and Old Swedish. Most present-day speakers of Scanian speak the Scanian dialect of Swedish, not the old language, which is severely endangered. So you see Skånska comes from Indo-European Germanic, North Germanic, East Scandinavian, and then East Danish. We can see on the map here where it's spoken. So this is the area of Malmö, Lund, Helsingborg. There has been an active campaign from local Scanian interest groups to promote Scanian as a separate language on par with the official minority languages Finnish, Sami, Romani, Yiddish and Meänkieli. Though this has been rejected by Swedish authorities. Swedish linguists generally view Scanian as just one of many local or regional Swedish or Scandinavian dialects, some of which differ considerably from standard Swedish, but don't meet the criteria of a separate language. Scanian was originally classified as a separate language in a book, I believe, but was declassified as a language in 2009, that late. A request for reinstatement was submitted during the 2009 annual review process, but rejected on the ground of mutual intelligibility. Within the previous SIL International Classification of Scanian were the dialects in the province of Scania, some of the southern dialects of Halland, Hellenska, the dialects of Blekinge, Blekingska, Blekingemål, and the dialects of the Danish island of Bornholm, Bornholmsk in Danish. With the establishment of the Scanian Academy and with recent heritage conservation programs funded by Region Skåne and the Swedish government, there is a renewed interest in the region. Scanian as a cultural language and as a regional identity, especially among younger generations of Scanians. Many of the genuine rural dialects have been in decline subsequent to the Industrial Revolution and urbanization in Sweden. The population of Scania make up about 13.5% of the total population in Sweden. Gotland, Västergötland, Gothenburg, Kiruna, Jämtland, Kalix, Västerbotten, Stockholm, Rinkeby, Uppland, Örebro, Scania, Småland, Österbotten, Estonia, Ukraine. It's an Estonian, Swedish, Gammal Svenska, spoken in Gammal Svensk Ukraine. It derives from the Estonian Swedish dialect. While origin switches, the dialect shows influence from Estonian Russian. Crazy. Swedish and Danish are considered to have been the same dialect, Old East Norse, up until the 12th century. However, some scholars speculate that there might have been certain dialect differences within the Nordic language area as early as the Proto-Nordic period. The term Swedish is not mentioned specifically in any source until the first half of the 14th century. And Scanian appeared in writing before 1200, at a time when Swedish and Danish had yet to be codified. The long struggle between Sweden and Denmark over the right to claim the old Scanian manuscripts as an early form of either of the two national state languages has led some odd twists and turns. In modern Scandinavian linguistic research, the assertion that Old Scanian was a Swedish dialect before the Swedish acquisition of most of Old Skåneland is now seldom argued by linguistic scholars, although the comparative and historical research efforts continue. One of the artifacts sometimes referred to as support for the view of Scanian as separate from both the Swedish and Danish languages, a letter from the 16th century where the Danish Bible translators were advised not to employ Scanian translators since their language was not proper Danish. After the Treaty of Roskilde in 1658, the former Danish provinces of Blekinge, Halland and Scania became a Swedish dominion, but they were allowed to keep their old privileges, laws and customs. However, from the 1680s a process of Swedification was introduced, including a switch of languages used in churches and restrictions imposed on cross-border travel and trade. The situation in Scania was unique from a linguistic point of view. Modern sociolinguistic studies often approached it as a way to study the roots of linguistic nationalism. The gradual transition to Swedish has resulted in the introduction of many new Swedish characteristics into Scanian since the 18th century, especially when it comes to vocabulary and grammar. In spite of the shift, Scanian dialects have maintained a non-Swedish prosody, as well as details of grammar and vocabulary that in some aspects differ from standard Swedish. Pronunciation of vowels and consonants in such qualities as length, stress and intonation has more in common with Danish, German and Dutch, and occasionally English, than with Swedish. The degree of contrast between the Scanian dialects and standard Swedish is sometimes in the popular press compared to the differences between British English and Australian English. The characteristic Scanian diphthongs, which do not occur in Danish or Swedish, are popularly often to be signs of Scania's natives' efforts to adapt from a Danish to a proper Swedish pronunciation, however. Linguists reject that explanation for the sound change, but there is no universally accepted theory for why the sound changes occur. Scanian once had many unique words which do not exist in either Swedish or Danish. In attempts to preserve the unique aspects of Scanian, the words have been recorded and documented by the Institute for Dialectology, Onomastics and Folklore Research in Sweden. Preservation is also accomplished by comparative studies such as the Scanian Swedish-Danish Dictionary Project, commissioned by the Scanian Academy. Several Scanian dictionaries have been published over the years, including one by Sten Bertil Wiede, who wrote his doctoral thesis on the names of plants in South Swedish dialects. This publication and a variety of other Scanian dictionaries are available through the department in Lund. Scanian realizes the phoneme R as an uvula trill in clear articulation. So it's the R sound, isn't it, that you have in Danish and German. Holig. But everyday speech has more commonly a voiceless H or a voiced uvula-fractive R, depending on phonetic context. That is in contrast to the alveolar articulations and retroflex assimilations in most Swedish dialects north of Småland. So R, rolig, röra, ra, 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 H, H, H. So that's I think that's a H, and that's a H, and that's a R. The realizations of the highly variable and uniquely Swedish fricative, I think that's also tend to be more velar and less labelized than in other dialects. The phonemes of Scanian correspond to those of Standard Swedish and most other Swedish dialects, but long vowels have developed into diphthongs that are unique to the region in the southern parts of Skåne. Many diphthongs have a pharyngeal quality similar to Danish vowels. When I was looking up how to pronounce this word, I would say Skåne, but it advised that I should say Skåne, with a what? Skåne, rather than just Skåne. So that's a diphthong with a w and the o. Skåne. Okay, you ready? Should we look at some of the words? Alika is a jackdaw, Kaja in Swedish and Alika in Danish. Elling, duckling, Ankunga in Swedish and Elling in Danish. Hytta, to throw, kasta, kaste. I don't know how to pronounce that. Ho, hu. Huvud, hoved. Glytt, a very young boy, glytt. Du är en glytt. Glyttig, silly, frivolous, tramsig. Glyttig, du är helt glyttig. Greppa, woman, girl, from flicka. Oh, well, different to flicka. Greppa. Greppa, du är en greppa. Fjone, idiot, from fåne. Fåne in Swedish. Fjone, fjone. Fybik, idiot. Fybik. Grunna på, to think about. Fundera, grunna. Overveje. Grunna på. Hiad, very hungry for. Mycket sugen på. Hia efter. Hiad. Would you say, jag är hiad? Jag är hiad på. Hialös, impatient. Otålig, utålmodig. Viljelös. Hialös. Jag är mycket say something like det är mycket mörk bakgrund. And then mylla, mill, kvarn och mule. This word is used in many geographical names. Möllevången, neighborhood in Malmö. Svanemøllen, station in Copenhagen. Møllebacken, Møllebacken, the names of a countless number of hills. Mill Hill in English. Pantoffel, potato, potatis, kartoffel. Påg. I've heard this word, I think, in a song. I think you pronounce it not påg, but påg. Påg. Pojke, påe, påg. Dräng och dräng. Dräng. How do you say this? Skälig. Disgusting, ugly, frightening. Äcklig, ful. Skrämmande, otäck. Otäck. Rädelig, rärlig. Rärlig. Jag kan inte säga det på danska. Rärlig. Uläckert. Grim. Rullebö. Rullebö. Wheelbarrow. Skott. Kära. Rullebö. Trillebö. Romma. Det hett. Träffa. Ramme. Träffe. Tradig. Boring. Tråkig. Tråkig. I did that. Tråkig. Tråkig. Tradig. Träls. Träls. Kedelig. Tåke. 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 Rusta. Tupp. Hanne. Like a hen, I guess. Hanne. Spann. Hink. Spann. Spann. Skoban. Skoband. Shoelace. Skåsnöre. Snöreband. Snöreband. Sulten. Hungry. Sulten. Hungrig. Svulten. Sulten. Tös. Tös. Girl. Flicka. Tös. Pia. Tös. Do you say tös or tös? Tös. Fan. Så vatten. Fan. Not fan, sorry. I nearly said fan. Van. Van. Vatten. Van. Vindmölla. Vindkraftverk. Vindmölla. Vång. Fång. Vång. Meadow. Äng. Fäng. Fang. Möllevången. Malmö. Mill Meadow. Äta. To eat. Really. Äta. Äta. Spisa. Äta. Flabb. Mouth. Mun. Mun och flabb. It can also mean a mouthy person. Du är en flabb. Fällben. To fall, to trip. Fällben. Krockben. Falde. Spändben. Can you think of any other words that you would use that are just Skånska words? If so, could you put them in the comments? I want to see lots of lovely comments. Bearing in mind I nearly moved to Skåne and I was looking at houses in Lund and Helsingborg. So I'd love to know more about the local dialect, and I'll put a nice little video here in case you want to watch another one. But please do write me a comment. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, and thanks so much for subscribing. Okay, speak soon everyone. Bye. Hej då.